So we've taught our children, we were taught as infants to say hello and goodbye.
I realize not every person who dies is celebrity, but they're special.
Yeah.
They mean something to somebody, and they just want to share their story. And we help them do that. That's kind of a really cool thing.
The most special things you can have in a funeral, the things that you'll always remember for families, are the things that actually don't cost any money.
Death has been something that people have tried to isolate, and we're saying it needs to be integrated, to integrate it into life, so that the person, it's not a reincarnation or something like that. It's just recognizing and honoring and facilitating the natural circle of life.
Welcome to Undertaking the Podcast. I'm flying solo. I'm your host, Brian Waters. As Ryan says, the great American man of folklore. I don't know what that means, but I like to do backwards speak. I've got my special microphone with Andy Davis on it. Andy Davis is dead, and today he is in, I would say, international headquarters of the podcast studios, but I'm not on my front porch. I'm actually still at work. It's been a long day. So, Alexandra from Parting Stone, tell everyone your role and welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm the director of outreach and education at Parting Stone, which means that I create the Death Curious brand, which is a blog and a podcast and social media accounts that are all about dismantling death avoidance, having healthier conversations around death, and engaging the public with death curious ideas. And I also run the Death Rocks Club, which is a fan club for people who love Parting Stone. And I also give lectures at conferences around the country about the death care profession.
Let's just jump right into it. Have you been challenged out speaking about death out in the public?
I would say yes. And maybe because I'm giving talks at death care conferences, it's not that I'm talking about death, but it's the way that I'm talking about death that's been challenged.
Well, welcome to the club. I'm a card-carrying member of I Do It Wrong, so
yeah.
Welcome. Noted. So since we both do it wrong, let us continue. For our listeners that don't know Alexandra, I was just on your show, the Death Curious podcast, which, how many episodes was out when we recorded?
Well, we just started over at the rebrand of Death Curious. The podcast used to be called Death Care Decoded, and that had like 90 something episodes. And then we started over, and you were my episode number 6, which actually published today. So I just finished uploading it.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. There will be 2 parts. So it's part 1.
Okay. So I'm not going to air this until after it's out. I do want to go back and watch it. I definitely will share it. Do you have that social anxiety or that imposter syndrome when you go back and listen to yourself or watch yourself? I think we all do. On those speakers who speak publicly, we all do it. We all criticize ourselves, and we all are our worst critics. But it really does hurt when someone says something because we are trying hard. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, Alexander, where you got criticism from, and it was the way you talk about death. But from an undertaker standpoint, I'm very specific with how I use that word, and I believe we touched on it on your show, and we're about ready, listeners, to go down the rabbit hole with identities. I think that's where we're going. I'm slowing myself down because we were so excited on the last show, and it was off the hook. So I want to give listeners the Undertaking the Podcast, old man funeral director. I'm going to be controlled and calm. Wherever we were going there, this rebrand and this identity that we have that we want to talk about. And we're talking about public speaking, and that's where I've circled the airport. Let's land it now. There we go. You are not a funeral director, are you?
Correct.
Do you identify as an embalmer?
No.
You know how you identify as an embalmer?
Become an embalmer.
Embalm
someone. There you go. Yeah.
Or you embalm someone unlicensed, which is supported in some parts of the country. And when I say that, not legally,
Colorado.
It's like, well, there we go. Thank you. Colorado is completely legal. The sky has not fallen in how many years, Alexandra? Yep. And as a matter of fact, our mutual friend has one of the most prolific colleges there, right? Yeah, so things are different across the states. So let's start exploring where you may get challenged on when you talk about death, because death, you're going to die, right?
Correct. Yes. And so is everyone that I know and love. And so is everyone that you know and love. And so is everyone who's ever lived in every plant and every animal on planet Earth and probably planet Earth itself.
Yeah.
Everyone, everything, nothing is forever.
So where do we go from there?
Exactly. That's a really big, scary thought. It's a really big, scary thought. It's a really big, scary thing to think about. And so when I'm doing like public facing talkings that are not in the death care space, that's usually where people are like, oh, I know it's hard to think about. It's hard to talk about, which is the reason for starting Death Curious at Parting Stone. Is we wanted a way to talk to people who were not in the profession, who were not dealing with this as their job every day, and who can have some unhealthy repercussions from grief avoidance, death avoidance, and not knowing how to talk about it and face mortality in a healthier way. But then at the death care conferences, when I am talking to death care professionals who do this as their job every day, the way that I get excited about innovation in death care, the way that I'm an advocate for new green options, weird options, championing the desires of the family, saying yes to everything, I get some pushback from that. People look at Parting Stone and say, that's undignified, or that's disgraceful or unclean or whatever, like what we do. And it's really not. It serves families. And we get a lot of feedback from families that we work with about how our new service is really good for them and has been healthy for them.
There's the flyer, folks, right in front of me.
Exactly,
Solidified Remains you can hold. If you haven't looked them up, let's do a plug here, partingstone.com.
That's it. And it's gotten better in the last couple of years. We started in 2018, I think, doing conference circuits. I wasn't quite an employee yet. I joined in 2019, but yeah, it's definitely gotten a lot better. But if I'm presenting on, eco-friendly options, I get so many funeral professionals being like, well, my families don't want that, even though there's a lot of data from consumers saying that they do. And so it's the way that I talk about death in like, let's do all these new cool things that I think I get a lot of pushback about.
Well, Ryan and I also get a lot of pushback. We were some of the first undertakers come out of the cornfield, peek out and go, hey, can we come into some of these new facilities? And they're like, no. We're like, oh, okay, can we come into yours? We keep asking until we get let in. And then we're like, oh, that's what it is. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then we come talk about it. That's been our experience over season 1 of our show. We've just had a bit of a rebrand ourselves. People say, what is season 2 of Undertaking the Podcast? You stopped at 500 episodes. And I went, no, it's kind of a silly little ruse. Like, it's folklore. Our expansion period was growing there and talking about ourselves here. I'm bonding with you and Parting Stone as you guys grow here because I get it. When you talked about the pushback and the challenges of eco-friendly options, I'm like, oh, you want to talk about pushback? That's ego in my head going, no, I want to actually bond because I get it that I get pushback from embalming, and why do I embalm? Because people ask me to do it, and if you stop, I'll sleep at night. But until then, I know how to do it very well, and that's why I keep getting called to really weird places when someone's in an emergency. I don't have it on a mug yet. There's an emergency undertaker for everyone, and we don't necessarily have to be licensed, but if someone needs Parting Stone information, I've got a friend in the network here that you know more than this about me. I don't have to be an expert in how I'm holding up the flyer, but how you guys you called it Death Rocks. That's a group. I called them Pocket Rocks one time to Justin. People call them all kind of things.
They do. Yeah.
He wasn't offended by that at the time.
Yeah, no. I mean, the technical term that's in like cremation textbooks is solidified remains. But yeah, people call them parting stones. People call them cremation stones. People call them pocket stones. I mean, whatever. That's the thing is, who are we to gatekeep what other people experience? But we want to make sure that people know what our service is, what they'll be getting, and what the benefits are. That's what we care that people know. So.
And that's what I feel kind of what the heart of an undertaker does is when we're sitting in the table and someone knows more than us, we turn to them and go, your turn to answer. Mm-hmm. And we're still getting good at that, even at 40 and 41 here. This is our show, so we do talk a lot. But in practice, we're rather silent people, and we're observers. And what I observe is the pushback within funeral service on our identities. That is what I wanted to talk about. You not being a licensed embalmer. Mm-hmm. Well, as soon as you and I walk into Colorado, we have the same height. We're the same expert within the community. Now, we all know what to do. We all know how to undertake. When someone walks up to us and says, we need to send Mom to Arlington and we want to see her one more time before she goes, we know who's going to take care of that. Possibly. Right. We may need some more information because they may want to see Mom in a solidified state, right? We got to ask more questions, but we know who to pass the ball to. That's how true undertaking work. It is a collective of co-opetition, I call it. I don't know who came up with that. We like it. So that pushback, can you talk about that in the green community? Where's the pushback coming from? Because it's not necessarily from the consumer per se.
Yeah, and I love the way you're talking about that because that's how I feel like everything should be collaborative. Nobody can be an expert on everything. Yeah, like I'm not going to be out there giving lectures on embalming because that's not who I am and that's not what I do and I don't know how to do it. But what I do know how to do is talk to people. What I do know how to do is research, gather data, look at studies, look at surveys, look at trends, do reviews of like, wow, these numbers have been rising steadily for 20 years. What does that mean for the next 20 years? And think creatively and critically about that. And so like I can be useful to people who have other skills and people who have other skills can be useful to me. And it's about that teamwork and collaboration and letting go of that scarcity mentality where we feel like we're in competition with each other, you know, because I think it's a both and situation, not an either or. And that's not what people hear when they are in one of my lectures. And I'm like, a study of all consumers in 2020 by IBM Business Institute says that like 80% of consumers are looking for more green options across ages, generations, and demographics. Like people are like, oh, I don't want to hear that because that means I have to change what I do in my business. And it's like, no, just find a green cemetery to work with or find a natural organic reduction company to work with. You don't have to change what you do and you're not going to like lose your customer because the customer who wants something different than you offer is not going to come to you anyway. So like, how can we support each other? How can we collaborate? That's my perspective on it.
Undertaking the podcast is brought to you in part by Ron King and Butler Coach Company. Butler Coach has been providing the highest quality new, used vehicles to funeral homes for over 80 years. If you're looking for a new hearse, limousine, or service utility vehicle, Ron's got you covered with quality vehicles from Platinum, MK, and K2 vehicles. Great guys. Or if you're interested in in the market for a used vehicle, give Ron a call at 800-876-0857. To learn more, visit butlercoach.com and follow them on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Ron's real active on that. You see him doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Butler Coach, at your service since 1936.
You want to call him? It's like 8 o'clock at night. Let's call him.
Well, let's see if he answers.
Okay, give me a second. I got to type this in. All right. Get him on speaker here. He might not be happy.
Hey, buddy.
He must be have me on caller ID. How are you doing, pal?
Fantastic. Just enjoying a beautiful day in Indiana.
Yeah, you're on the air, by the way.
Oh, boy.
Well played, man. Well, Ron, we were just running through your ad, man. We didn't know if you had anything you wanted to say.
I just want to wish everybody enjoy your podcast and hope everybody gives it a listen. And if they ever are in the need of a professional vehicle, then give us a call. We've been providing professional cars to everybody since 1936 and would like to help any funeral home with that if the need arises.
Now, since 1936, just to clarify for the listeners at home, you're not over 100 years old, right?
I'm not, but our company is close.
Okay. You almost had to think about that for a minute.
He did think about it.
All right, well, let's get into the show. Thanks, Ron.
Right on, Ron.
All right, talk to you later.
And I think what you and I have done here in our last podcast and in this one here, I'm saying, where's the focus at? When you say the statistic, I heard, well, I have to. And I'm like, ew, well, I don't want to do that either if I have to.
No.
But and I hate to do this with I get to, but I get to do brand new funeral service every day. I don't have packages. I mean, they're packages, but we break them every day. It's straight itemization, and everyone knows what they're paying for. And in the end, everyone goes, that's kind of easy. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't even do it with a tie this time. And they're like, oh, we didn't notice. I'm like, yeah, it was brand new. Right? My little area of the world here that people can look down on because of my identity as an undertaker that does maybe 34 very intense funerals a year, from cutting the grass to embalming, to green burial, to returning someone home, to all sorts of things that we do here. And it's because we have been open and inclusive in what we're doing. We say we just need asked. And it's not necessarily ask us to do something. We need to know what your need is. If you tell us what you need, an undertaker will flip over a desk and just do it. And generally, it may not even be a charge. But it's our focus, right? Can you expand on that, maybe, that thought?
Yeah, absolutely. And something I've noticed just talking to like people about their interactions with the funeral profession is that I think a lot of funeral consumers and funeral planners actually don't feel empowered to ask for non-traditional things, even if those things were to appeal to them. And so I think there's a gap here in education of the public and the communication that happens between the public and the funeral director. So like when I talk to my friends or people at other conferences or in other spaces about green burial options that are real, right? They're like, wow, I would really love that, but like my funeral home doesn't offer that. Or like, wow, I wish that I had known to ask for that. It wasn't offered to me. So I think there is some kind of like abyss that lies between the funeral director being like, I'll say yes if people ask, and the consumer not knowing what to ask for.
Exactly. And I believe it comes down to language and what we speak. And is it connected to a task itself or a product itself? Because if we can march it back to those specific things, we become, I call it the area of subjectiveness of funeral service, because that's where we find what's fitting and what's not fitting. And it's based to me on intent. If we intentionally do something, we actually impart a part of ourselves to that. That's how we make something sacred, like a stone. It comes from someone. We hold it gently because it is precious, because it meant something, and we are imparting value into that thing. And this is what people invest in, is not the product itself. It's the ability to make it sacred easily. So we saw this with the onset of embalming. People didn't get to do this often. And once they saw it, they went, oh my God, this is amazing. And everyone did it. And it was marketed really well. Let's not be wrong. It was. And then once people had to do it, we all went, why? And then if you can't answer why simply, we've lost them, right?
Yes.
So all of us need people to speak up and share their truth. I almost hate saying that because it's so generic, right?
Yeah.
Is there a better way to say it? Let's ask.
Let's see. Maybe people just showing up with honesty and vulnerability, maybe. I don't know. I sound like a contestant on The Bachelor, kind of, but...
Well, I feel like there are barriers between communication between me as an undertaker and the general public. And it's not just death. If we know what death is, and you and I know what it is, right? We've decided that this body dies, then something else happens. And that's where we could have 10,000 podcasts, and we'd love to. But for this one, the body dies and we have to do something with it. And when I say we, that's the people left over. They either have to do it because they're told to, or they don't have any other option because they just don't know. So what I've kind of come to, in my point as an undertaker, is I have to give them some sort of freedom. How would you tell me to do that? Because I have an idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. And from an undertaker or a funeral director or a funeral planner's viewpoint, I mean, I think it would be impossible to offer every family every single option that they could do.
Thank you.
You know, I think that would be literally impossible.
Do it.
But I think getting to know the family enough to be like, this family seems a little non-traditional. Maybe they would like alkaline hydrolysis, or this family seems a little more traditional, you know, and like making sure that you have options to offer that are not just the traditional ones when that seems appropriate. That's, again, I don't do that job. I feel a little bit like I shouldn't be commenting on that side of it, because what I have decided is the problem in that gap in education as someone who is more on the, like, I'm in the funeral profession. I am in contact with funeral homes and funeral professionals. I see how they function. I see how they work, but I'm also in contact with the general public who generally, for whatever reason, has sometimes negative opinions about our profession. I think that the actual problem gets back to what I was talking about in the intro, which is this phenomenon of death avoidance and people being scared to think about death while they're still alive, people being scared to spend time deciding what they want for themselves, what they would like their loved ones to do, planning for themselves, and actually educating themselves on the options on their own, right? Like, I want to empower people to be comfortable thinking about death ahead of time.
Yeah.
And teaching themselves, empowering them with knowledge and information themselves, so that it is no longer the job of the funeral director to give someone an entire education and 1 hour meeting. That's what I am trying to do with Death Curious.
So let us all pause, take a deep breath, and say, just for a moment, thank you. Seriously, like, thanks. Thanks, because here's the thing. You don't have to. It's not your job. I mean, maybe it's your job. You get paid for it, but maybe not. This is not our job.
But I chose this job.
You chose that job, and we chose this hobby / maybe job as we grow it. We chose this, and we're still here. So, well, thank you, because that is important. It is a collective that we're trying to build here, because it's not just undertakers. It's too much for the funeral directors to carry. It's too much for the embalmers. It's too much for those green advocates or product advocates, because product is important. And as much as we downplay it on the show, it's not everything, but neither is service. It is the connection that we have to the human being, and whatever that we do is what we've come down to. Like you said, we're in crisis mode. We're the trauma center when we're sitting down with a family after a death. If Ryan was here, he could do the paramedic. We're triage. And we need to stare at it and say, okay, what is this? And we're like, okay, have they died? Some families will challenge you on that. No, they have not died. And you go, well, bring me up to where I need to be. So, and that's the way you and I have kind of came at this conversation. It's not been posed as I'm an undertaker, embalmer, and I know more. We've got a free flow of information, and that's why I asked you on that freedom portion. We do need to know what you know, because people will offer you information that they don't feel comfortable with me. So my biggest battle, and it's not a battle, it's a challenge, and thank you, Dr. Sharon, textbook author extraordinaire. She's lovely. We'll introduce you someday if you don't already know. It's just a challenge. That's all it is. I don't have to do anything other than look at this as either a problem or a challenge. And I don't like problems, so let's get rid of them. They're challenges, and they're not mine. A family comes in with someone who's died, and we got to do something, and I got to figure out what they asked me to do. And they got to be specific. So I got to figure out what they assume. And it's, am I a cook? Am I just going to embalm? Or am I just going to bathe? Are we just going to cremate? We don't just do anything without permission. And that's what we're just freely asking for. But not all undertakers sit down at the table and go, I know a whole lot of things, but none of them are important until you tell me what you want.
Yeah.
Am I wrong in this, or where could you guide me?
What do you mean, are you wrong? That sounds correct to me.
Yeah, because undertakers are seeking, funeral directors and embalmers are asking the world and others that are not educated, tell me what you know. Write your books, do your podcasts, show us what you know, and we'll shut up. If we can shut Brian up for just a minute, you'll tell us that, hey, as long as you're inclusive, I call it the 3 rules that I'm stealing from Return Home. Does it work, whatever it is? We got to find out what it is first, and does it work, whatever we're doing about it? And then does it show love, and does it hurt others? And this is the last one where the rubber meets the road in undertaking or death care. There's still a lot of hurt, and it's all human interaction. And that's where we can do a lot of good. So we can take this podcast right now wherever you want to go. Alexandra, I'm here to give it over to you.
Oh my gosh. Well, I was prepared to come on your podcast and talk about what you wanted to talk about. I love what we've been talking about so far. And it is nice and refreshing to hear that perspective that is a little bit more like open. And I get curious about how to get this information to people. You know, like I'm trying to grow like the blog audience, and I'm trying to go do more speaking engagements. And, you know, yeah, I'm curious about like how to get people interested in and comfortable talking about death in healthier ways to help the funeral profession and to help people have better experiences when their loved ones pass, you know?
Well, and I just want to tell you that you're doing it. It feels like we're all alone in this effort to share ourselves and our experiences that we're good with others. And I do it just as strongly and passionately as you and others within funeral service. It all comes down to what is it are we sharing? And it's not been the Parting Stone product that comes across in our dialogue with my first encounter with you on the show. We did not see each other. This is our second time, right? As I think, new friends. This is how
Yeah.
friendships work. I like to say
Absolutely.
that that's how we build networks. Ryan and I joked about in our first season, networks are built around alcohol, but those are built on faulty foundations. And we're like, we're going to talk about that in season 2 when we didn't even know we were going to have it. So now that we've gotten down to the real stuff of undertaking, which is the stuff, this sentiment. And that's what Todd Van Beck taught us. He always said that, like with children, and I think he talked about his son, son. I think his name is Todd. I never really knew him that close, but his only son. He said that my only job as a parent is to teach them how to share. And then once they learn how to do that is to share with them how to teach. And it's like, wow, what a good premise. But Todd was the trickiest teacher I've ever known, and I've learned more about him since he's died because the dude haunts me. God love him. He'll never go away. But you can't teach anyone. And Ryan Ballard says this on our show. We've come to learn this, that when people stop listening, we stop talking. Now, I never shut up. I just find someone else to talk to. And I do want to listen. So I want to pass this back and forth here in the show. Let's ask ourselves some hard questions that we just want answers to.
Okay.
And from an undertaker standpoint, would it be fair, and I don't like labels, but you are in the green advocacy world.
Sure. Yeah.
Of undertaking. Why isn't it growing as fast as some say it is or some wish it would?
You mean like green burial or like alkaline hydraulic? Do you mean like, or just like green options in general?
Let's umbrella it from the sky down and say, why isn't this in general taking off? Or is it? Let's just do that. What is it? Is it going?
Yeah. Well, I think speaking to what I have gleaned from my research and talking to folks in the real world, I think that the generations that we are really going to see making big shifts towards green options in funeral care are my generation of millennials that are maybe just now starting to plan funerals and make those choices. So I think we're just not quite there in time yet, even though my grandparents who raised me are baby boomers, and even my grandmother is obsessed with like, I'm going to get these paper plates for the 4th of July because they're bamboo and they're recyclable, and gets really hyped on that, right? Like across generations, people are wanting greener options. But again, I think the education is lacking in that those options are available in death care. I think that there is also a financial hurdle to overcome. Right now, those things are very expensive, and death care should cost money because we live in a capitalist world, and the people who do the death care work deserve to be paid because it's a hard job. But also, it's a hard capitalist world that we live in, and people don't have $10,000 in their bank account to just drop at the drop of a hat. And so that makes natural organic reduction and alkaline hydrolysis unavailable to some people without like payment plans or credit cards. And even that is only accessible to people with a certain amount of privilege. And we need to acknowledge that too.
We'll touch on that privilege part if you want to stick around for a minute, because I live in a very underserved area of our community. Now it's very white and rural, but it is the poor area. But everyone wants to live here because it's pretty towny, and we're embracing it. So you can't live here. There's just no houses. That is the world I live in, is that folks have, and I don't want to say wants, because we all have wants, and that's a default, but they have needs that they're unprepared for, whether it's by death avoidance. I'm going to say life avoidance, because that's just what it is. These conversations are so rough. When I look at Greenbrier, I'm going to answer my own question, just be very brief, because I try to answer the whys in the briefest I can. There's a fellow that developed the Cosan, the pole behind Hearst, right? That a lot of undertakers mocked and made fun of. And he asked himself, what do people need in undertaking? They need comfort and confidence. And he's not wrong. He said this product can't help with that. And he's not wrong. It's not an every time product. Let's be real. But comfort and confidence is not wrong. But how do we get there? And that's where rubber meets a road. And how do we get there is I feel like it's freedom and opportunity that we're trying to get there. And the barriers to the entry market in green services and green options are ourselves. Number one, it's the provider is me. Because if I take everything as, oh, well, I have to, then it's troublesome already. If I take it as, they asked me because I know what I'm doing, work doesn't become work anymore for me. None of the funerals look the same because I'm open. I divorced my identity with this building. My legacy does not live in my father's building. I can pick it up and take it. Is it for sale? Never. right? The legacy's never for sale, and you can never take it from me because I'll just pick it up and move it, right? And but we feel challenged in funeral service. So the undertakers need to get out of our own way, and consumers just need to be empowered, and they can do it through you and me. We can do this as a collective. Ask the questions. Ryan and I used to do red flag shows. If you find a red flag that's bad enough, don't fight the resistance. Turn around and walk the other way. I think I was trying to get this out with Van Beck. We can't force teaching with fingers and pointing. This is pushing resistance onto people. We sit here with open hands going, just ask us and we'll tell you what we think, and you judge if it's right or wrong. So that's the funeral service we live in. And I do believe it's universal, but it's rather rural. So it's not flashy, but it can be. It's really cool. So that's the world that I live in. There's just barriers, and the first one's undertakers, the other one's consumers, and the other one's just stupid market barriers that we go, okay, we've created a little association. Trust me, I'm in all of them. And now you don't have it. Alexandra, you can't come to my British Embalmers meeting. Ben, can we say sorry in the minutes from our friends at Parting Stone because they're not in the minutes? I get mentioned in the magazine because I don't show up to the meetings. I'm associated with the British Embalmers, and I love them because they ask me to belong. But you can't be because we've made a rule. It's just for embalmers. That's not what undertaking is about. You can have a casket and take it home when nobody's dead. I'll sell you one. It's weird. No, it's not. I don't care. It's not my casket. We have to stop the judgment, right?
Yeah.
Tell me where I'm wrong, because I want to be.
You want to be wrong about stopping judgment? No, I love that. Yeah.
Well, I feel like it's my message, and if it's my message, then it's just wrong. It's kind of the message of funeral service, I think. Everyone come help, because this is hard work. And I just want to shut up and let you go with all of that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what you're talking about is accurate. What do I want to say about it, though?
It's not universal.
Yeah.
It's kind of hippie lovey, but it's very small and very small bubbles that don't interact because of the network. Their bubbles aren't big enough. Big city bubbles connect all over the world. And I'm not saying the big metro funeral homes are doing things wrong, but let's just be real about a process. More families are going through their doors than mine. And they're seeing more people than me, and I have more time. My connection from management to family is
right.
And it works, but that's not funeral service in mass. And we've got to fix it. And that's why I'm asking for help here, because I can't take this message to the masses either.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think, understanding that different geographic areas, different cultures, different ethnicities have different funeral needs, desires, and wants, and that your funeral home is not going to be the same as a funeral home in New York City simply because of the sheer volume of it and the people who live there. Like, that is true, right? That is true. It doesn't mean that your funeral home can't be prepared to serve someone that comes to you that might be different or have different needs. It doesn't mean that your customers are all going to be one size fits all or all want the same thing. So I think there's just a balance there, right? And there's just a balance there.
I think we need to understand that our infrastructure is ready. Pretty much now. We made it through a pandemic. We didn't break. And if consumers start asking for different products in mass, easy. They may have to wait a little while on products. Services, same thing. Might have to wait a little bit. I think it's the human interaction. I want to ask you that. Is that where the rubber meets the road in undertaking? Is that human interaction? I don't have a palace here.
Yeah. What do you mean about the palace?
I mean, this building, this legacy is not in this building, yet people come, and it's that human interaction because they feel comfort in asking their questions in a rural setting. You put me in a big city, I'm not going to be comfortable, and I might fail at undertaking, right? You know that as just a human being.
Yeah, and I think I can only speak very subjectively because I only have my opinions and desires as well that I know are not going to be the same as everyone. So just disclaimer about that. But I, for one, if I were to be going into a funeral home to plan a funeral for my grandmother or my grandfather or whoever it is that is passed, right? Like, I would not want to meet with someone in a business suit and tie. I would feel like I was at church, that I was being talked down to or belittled or sold to in a way that would make me feel very on edge. And I know there's legal paperwork and stuff involved, but why does it have to be such like a business conference room, church on Sunday kind of vibe when that is not comforting to me and will, in fact, me as an individual, that would make me shut down, close off, not really want to open up to you. It's not a comfy environment for me, you know?
There's that comfort word. We're trying to find that, and we're not finding it in the suit. I know you didn't find it in the church. I heard that word. I know a transactional process, like, I don't want to say internet-based, but no human connection. But what I hear from you is what is a resurgent in the boutique market? Like, if you look around at any sort of resurgence and new growth in the market economy, you're seeing it start from the boutique level, the coffee companies, the Parting Stones. I mean, these things are growing because it starts with a human interaction, and then we keep that as we grow. And I know funeral service has lost that along the way because funeral service is based on our culture and how stable our culture is. If our culture is set in a way, churched, their rituals are rather predictable. But when our culture becomes unpredictable and our identities become unpredictable, we don't have a package for y'all anymore. And I hate to say dumb it down, but I've got to get to the point of comfort to extract information because I need to know what do you need. We start with, okay, what happened? Mom died. It's always mom. Sorry, mom. Do you need to see her? You're in charge. Who's in charge? That's a whole nother podcast, but you're in charge. Do you need to see him? Yes or no? No. Okay, cool. As an undertaker, does anybody else? Ooh, this gets weird now, but we'll just ask that question. If the answer is no, we're moving on. Don't need to see mom. What do you want to do with mom? Oh, well, yeah, we're not getting ready for anyone to see. Now it's moving on. And then we go along the line and there's all these processes, but we've got to extract that information. I'm going to tell you, I met a family at their house with Hey Dudes, some brand new Levi's because I had to buy a new outfit since I lost a bunch of weight, but I went casual to their home. They invited me. I said, where will you be more comfortable? And they said, in our home. And I said, perfect. I have all the tools to do that because of our supporters. And it made them comfortable. But I decided not to come in the 3-piece. Now, I've done the 3-piece and the sandals in Spokane, Mexico, but I wouldn't have done that in the house. But I went very similar to where I am now minus a higher button and done hair without the ponytail. But they might have been okay with the ponytail. They didn't mind the long hair, but I was raised in a culture and an identity that an undertaker is a white man and we look a certain way.
Correct.
And I have to maintain that. And what I wanted to ask about, and I didn't know how to ask it, Alexandra, but I broke that in myself this year. I'm thin. I don't drink. I go to church. I have long hair. Ryan thinks I'm going to lead a youth pastor group. And if I get a guitar, he's going to go apoplectic. Alexandra, guess what I'm going to do? Or no, guess what I already had? It's in the attic. I brought it down. It's a guitar.
Yeah.
So I'm having fun in life and I'm undertaking very well. It's dragging me closer to families and it hurts a lot more. And I find that the infighting, because of our identities, as I'm a funeral director and you're not, and I'm an embalmer and you're not, and you've been very hesitant, and I'm just going to say that because it's true, about telling me anything on a podcast for undertakers. Well, surprise, most of the people that listen to this want to hear what you have to say. And you've supported me every step of the way of, Brian, you're on the right path. And I'm just trying to say this is not my idea. This is a collection of 500 not undertakers that have led Ryan and I down the path of undertaking the podcast. And I was on your show last time. Thank you for being here. I don't need to end this, but I've spoke so much. I feel like I've steamrolled you. I let off this. This is a very real anxiety that I have in me that I deal with every day. And we're going to be talking about it on the show. This manifests in me as rejection of my families because human beings are so good at picking out what's missing. If they were watching videos, they've seen that your hair is close cropped and you don't have sleeves. They've noticed that I've got gray on my chest, which is my hair, and my button's unbuttoned. And I might have a ponytail, which is not okay in undertaking, but I'm telling you.
It should be, though. This is what I will tell you is like, we have to do away with that image of like the gaunt, haunted house looking undertaker in a suit that's scary and nobody wants to approach, because that image is what people have in their brains, and they're bringing that in when they talk to you, and they're already freaked out and intimidated, and they are not empowered in their knowledge. And that image makes people not really want to get curious about death or death care or the death profession. It makes people think, I can't be a funeral director, I can't be an embalmer, right? And so we don't see a ton of new people coming into the profession. There's been like such a huge problem with like finding qualified people in funeral homes in the last 10 years, you know? And like, I think that what you just said is like, well, we can't do the ponytail as an undertaker. Like, of course you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course you can. And you need to.
My hair is long in the front, and I get to do this if I can do it. I've lost weight, so I get one kind of cute moment in my own camera, and I just get to look at families and whatever they want. I get to say, if I can do it, I run it through my 3 things. If it doesn't show harm, I just say, as you wish. Mm-hmm. I torment my wife because she hates the hair. Here's the thing. I am being accepted in a new identity that is brand new to me. And here's the thing, Alexandra, this is where I wanted to get to, because I don't know how to ask these questions because it's not my white rural, but I have a new identity that is brand new. It's rather scary. And it's not just the alcohol. It's not church. What it is it's controlling anxiety and my own energies. It's really all it is. And I can't tell anyone how to do it other than chill out, everyone, and just ask for what you need, and there's someone out there that will help you. It's really not that big of a deal, but if you and I did not get along and we forced a podcast for 43 minutes, we've lost everyone. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we've lost listeners over the years because they think it's just an undertaking show, or it's just a new product plug show, or it's just, I'm going to save embalming by bringing all the embalmers on, and it's like, no. Along the way, we were told at the very beginning by Vernie Fountain, we just need a chance to say hello and goodbye, and I don't care how you do it. All he does is teach embalming to baby undertakers. And then we hit Thomas Lynch, and my world is all men. Okay? Thomas Lynch says we just need to lead with our humanity. Van Beck's like, if you just sit down and chill out a minute, you'll see everything. And it's like, you're all right if we just listen and take the I want and I out of the situation and go, what y'all need? I learned that from the country undertakers in the hills, Eastern Kentucky. Just knock the roosters off the couch and say, what do y'all need? And then we can connect. And where we're hurting each other is in our identities and undertaking. And that's what I wanted to ask your help on, because it doesn't matter if I'm an embalmer. I can do it when I'm asked. And if you're not, you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And yeah, I would love to see funeral directors and undertakers look more diverse, look like more people. I would love to see this profession reflecting people are people. Exactly. Yes, that mug. Exactly. And I would love to see this profession actually like reflecting different demographics, right? Like, why do we have this image of the white man in a suit? And even like a couple of years ago, I think that all of the people who were graduating from, not all the people, but the people who were graduating from mortuary school were over 50% female for the first time in a very long time. And there was this hearkening back to, well, death care before capitalism in America used to be like family work and women's work. And so we're like reverting back to that. But I want to push past that and say, like, where's the space for people to be out and queer as funeral directors? Where's the space for people to have different aesthetic styles? Like, I have tattoos that I could never show and if I were a funeral director, right? Like, I have a friend who on my podcast, there's an episode somewhere, said that in her apprenticeship, she got like written up, like a disciplinary action was taken against her because she wore too much makeup. Like, families don't care about that in this space. And when you make this like vanilla, stern, business-like aesthetic and facade that you put forward, it is off-putting to a large amount of people. Not everyone. We don't want to paint with a broad brush. We don't want to make every demographic a monolith, right? Like, some people are probably totally fine planning funerals as though it were just another day in a board meeting. Like, that's probably fine for some people, but it is not fine for everyone. It wouldn't be fine for me. It wouldn't be fine for the people that I know and love and care about and talk to these things about in my life. And yet that's what we're doing, and that's what we're giving them, and that's what the standard is. And funeral directors who are trying to be themselves and bring authenticity to the table are being reprimanded. And I think that is messed up.
There is now a voice in funeral service, and it is not just now. It has been here the entire time. And it is powerful, it is collective, and it is terrifying to those in a power structure that need to protect said power structure. If you need to protect the thing, and I got a Godfather's Pizza thing here. They don't pay me, but they should. The mob doesn't exist anymore, right?
I don't know.
Doesn't matter, right? Who cares?
I have no idea.
Because it probably does, but it's just
I
an
live in
example.
Philly, so I can't really speak to that.
It's an example of something that has become a caricature of itself. Do
Sure,
we know
a
organized crime still exists? Absolutely. Is it probably on a different level that's probably more sophisticated and ugly?
Yeah.
I hope not. Let's just hope not. But in a way, Italian Americans get beat up by that. And in a way, other identities get beat up by undertaking. Just go around this world and you'll find different identity getting beat up because they deal with dead bodies or the bereaved. And what I've found in 5 years of podcasting and 40 years of living is that when we break someone's spirit or energy, I don't want to say spirit because we can't locate it, but energy we can track, follow, and pass around. And it may be the same thing. I can't prove it to you, but there's a thing. If we break someone's will in this life and in this world when they're trying to do something sincere, it is the worst possible thing you can ever do. And it hurts. And we do it accidentally with each other every day. And I wish, if I had just one hope, that undertaking the podcast or the network can do, because everyone has a voice in the network. And just so you know, you have a voice in your own network, and it's part of the network, right? It exists, and it's there. And there is a massive ordeal going down in Vegas, and we're going to plug it here. You're going to put your second show out, right? I hung out at a certain mortuary, and I use ice packs now, so I can shake it. My SCH is weird now. It's a bonding thing, right? There's a big deal going down that you're going to plug. The network is doing this thing. It's your guys' deal. I want you to plug that, but I want to invite you and anyone that is a friend of my friend Alexandra. And over here I see your pronouns are they, them. I broke them often. And if I did, I apologize. And I know you probably don't care, do you?
That's probably another podcast too.
Right.
My gender is something that I'm really in the thick of right now. And it's something that's really personal. And I do get pretty inflamed actually when I'm misgendered after I tell someone what my pronouns are.
Did I do that, and was it notable this time?
No, I don't think that you have.
Because I don't think I did either, because it's a scary thing for me to do.
You've just been using my name, which is a great pronoun. I love that. It's great. Yeah, no, so I'm non-binary and my pronouns are they, them. I've been using they, them pronouns for a year now. And I've known I was non-binary for a bit longer than that, but hadn't come out and didn't really know what that meant. And it was really scary. And at this point in my transition, I've not done any medical transitioning. It's been very me trying to figure out what that means for me. What even is gender? It's this made up thing, in my opinion, that society's really upset about right now, where people are people and get to decide who they are for themselves, in my opinion. And being non-binary means that I feel like my gender expands far beyond a binary, right? A binary being a man or a woman. And I feel like there's a lot more.
A dot or a slash, one or the other, X or Y, right? That's it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I feel like my gender is something that's far more expansive and richer than having to choose between two options. And that's what non-binary means to me. So,
but it is an identity, correct?
Sure. That's an identity.
It's different than
me.
embalmer.
Yeah.
It's different than embalmer, but it is an identity that can be threatened, correct? So when I say, if I would have misgendered you per se, being non-binary, I don't get to pick one. Because it's not X or Y, it's somewhere in between, right?
Yes, correct.
It's not polarized.
Outside. I want to go outside of, because, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like the way you speak about that. I understand that in my brain, because everyone goes biological sex. And I'm like, come on, we're embalmers. We get that. It's noted on the embalming report. You circle that. It's noted. Just do that and then move on, because gender is important in that area.
Biological. It's separate. It's separate. From biological sex.
Because not that it is one in itself and we want to argue against it, but how does one identify? Because if I assume based on your sex that you identify as an embalmer and I dress you up as an embalmer, my God, if you're a green bean, you're going to break my arm. You're not for embalming. And I just use that as a metaphor because I know gender is way different. But
no, but that's it. I think that's an excellent metaphor. It's a really good way to put it to people, right? Is if I just make these assumptions based off of what I look at on your body, I'm going to make an ass of myself, right? That's right. Sorry, I can't say that word. We need to.
You can say ass. I don't bleep it. That's on cable.
Okay, great. Cool. Yeah, after this, I'm going to my volunteer community radio show and I have to be very careful there. So anyway, yeah, I mean, one of my good friends who's also queer and is in my polycule, and we...
Can you explain polycule if you want?
Oh, sure.
I'm a silly man and I make jokes everywhere, so please.
Yeah.
This was not intended with a negative spirit, but I told my wife I had a brand new friend and it was like a polyamorosaur. I said, it's not a dinosaur, it's a real person that does something different in me, and I'm going to learn about it one day, but probably just by talking, because I don't know anything about it.
So I practice non-hierarchical relationship anarchy polyamory, which means that I am capable of loving more than one person at once in many different ways. And I also don't choose hierarchies in my relationships based off of what their labels are. So I can have someone that I love very deeply that I don't call a romantic partner that takes up as much space in my life as someone who is a romantic partner. And I have a lot of very nuanced relationships. And when I say my polycule, it's like molecule. It's a network of people who are interconnected in these relationships. There are a shifting number of us at any given time, but in the core group, there's about 10 of us that are interconnected in these romantic, platonic, queer, queer, romantic, like all of these other joyful expressions of relationship. And I call them my family. I call them all of these different things. So
I love the way that you explain that in the language that you chose, because as soon as you said what it was by words, I understood it. And I wanted to say something like, oh, I got it. But then I wanted to listen to your definition to confirm that I picked up what you were putting down there. And I want to set aside a physical activity because that's just boring. We're talking about connecting with human beings, because what you just explained to me sounded a lot like my friend group minus the, other things that get in the weeds of human relationships. And we know how those work. So we're setting those aside. But what I just heard you say, and my mind just hiccuped, and this is what I was wanting to ask, is like, I have a trouble with the definition of the word family because it is not the same thing for every family that walks through my doors or for me.
Yes.
And I don't care whether you put wife or partner or anyone next to your obituary, just put their name. Everyone knows. Let's just move on from that label. Labels is what slows down making death arrangements, is they were this or they were that. And we want to make sure that they match and are appropriate and right and don't show harm. So we have to take in all these considerations, but I can't do that in my own life. Or I notice that in the living, that they can't do that with theirs either. And I look at someone who does something risky and outside of, some would say counterculture, and I'm like, this is human interaction that has been done for years. Now, you had an aversion to church, and I could go to church, so I had a similar conversation off with someone else, and we were talking about just church in general, and I'm like, for me right now, I'm not into the weeds of it, so I'm like, if there were 10 big things that we probably shouldn't do or should not do carefully, if we just had to write down 10, what would they be? And it was just kind of a funny back and forth of, they started naming new things that were a little bit different than was maybe thousands of years ago. And I'm like, that's interesting. You noted those 10 things, because I just said pick 10. And I didn't ask you what they were. I just happened to go to church, and I kind of went, I don't have to. Somebody else did. And let's just be gentle with that rule before anything happens. So what I see is activity different than me on a personal heterosexual marriage family label. And in my family unit, I see a lot of control. There's a dynamic family unit that is based off input and production. So you talked about a hierarchy, and in any marriage, there is a hierarchy, and it's very naturally occurring, or there's just not, because it's based on some sort of spiritual energy level, whatever vibration. We're going to get weird in season 2, folks. But can you go into that? Because
I can. Yeah. So it's hard to translate, because in a traditional marriage, like you're talking about with 2 people, right? There are 2 people, but I have 2 partners that I am romantically dating right now. And then I have 3 other people that I'm casually dating at this given moment. Okay. That shifts, that changes, things work out, things don't work out. There's something in polyamory culture that we talk about as the relationship escalator, which is the way that people expect relationships to go in society, which is you meet, you go on a date, you have sex, you get married, you have children, and you die. And it's like every single one of these things is like a level up, like an achievement that you have to get to and unlock on an escalator.
Break that paradigm.
So when you break that, there is no more escalator. And it's like, I can have a relationship with you and we never have to get married, or we can have children children and we don't have to get married, or we can get married and never cohabitate. So we're jumping off the escalator. We're deciding how much we want to entwine our lives, if at all. We're deciding if this is romantic or not. We're deciding if this is sexual or not. We're deciding if this is platonic and sexual or whatever it is, right? Like, it's rewriting the map and getting to choose what feels good and natural in each relationship, and allowing that relationship to take up the amount of space that it wants to without forcing it to be something that it's not. And allowing...
I like what you're saying. No, don't get weird, everybody. Oh, because what I'm hearing is that no one is forced. It is an experience. It is, we come together for a unique
consensual experience,
like a concert, or sometimes a funeral. It is an intentional activity with another human being, which is what the entire world does with identities and escalators. And when we break the paradigm, we break that hierarchy of control, do we not?
Yeah.
I wanted to bring this somehow into the funeral service death care debate, because what flowed from your mouth was free flowing and real, was it not? The death care portion of talking with an undertaker was mildly forced, wasn't it? Until we really hit our flow. I was trying to get here is where I was wanting to go, because this is the same type of interdynamic relationship that we have making a funeral and bringing these decisions together. We have multiple human beings sitting there, have a goal in mind of an experience called funeral, and we're doing it together, or we're going to storm out, or we're going to throw a fit, or we're going to fall in love, or we're going to, who knows, the strangeness that Van Beck will do the mirror thing. We don't have to do that. It's just messy life in a death situation, in a death experience. Where we get tied up is regret, because it is a connection to that human being and then all the living humans around it. So what I find is that what our trouble with funeral service is the connection and the flow, that non-binary in between. It's not the undertaker or the family, but it's all those living energies in between that comes to this thing we call funeral, and how we all approach it. Whether it's, I'm going to have an experience, and at the end I'll say, I was a part of that and I don't know what the hell happened, but it's over, and everybody felt pretty good, but I don't know what happened. Or we judge it coming from an experience of, well, I didn't like that priest, I've never been Catholic, or plug in the subjectiveness and we hit walls and create conflict, right? But you and I have found a balance here in two identities miles apart. I just started going to church, but I'll have a few more churches in me before we see each other in Vegas, right? At the big deals that we were inviting each other to. We're going to get there before we're done. But I'm so glad we got here. Did we find some unity in this area of we don't do harm almost first? And then we figure out what we are doing. Because if we don't like it, well, I'll just go over here, right? Or you'll just go over there. And then if we depart on our own accord, not negatively, we've got positive experiences. It's just on full alert, and we're on alert for what is missing when a death occurs. And the only thing missing is connection in the dead person. That's where I'm at. So I want corrected from you is what I'm asking for.
No, I think that's good. I think I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Okay.
But I'm very engaged with this idea of using like non-hierarchical relationship anarchy poly and applying it to the death care space in the funeral profession, because like if we're talking about in relationship standards, what is expected, what society expects of us, it's that your husband or wife is going to be the opposite gender of you, and they're going to be like the most important person in your life because they have that title. And then maybe your family comes second, and then your friends come third, and then like coworkers come forth, and trickling down from there in like this hierarchy of people who get your time and attention and are close to you, right? And if we in relationship anarchy and polyamory that is non-hierarchical are doing away with that hierarchy and saying, I love my partner very much, but I also have this best friend that feels like a life partner that's platonic, and I want that person to also be as important as this other person and get an equal share of the pie, or even an equitable share of the pie that might be bigger than the share that my romantic partner needs. Like, I want to be free to do that, right? Or I have 3 romantic partners that I'm committed to long-term, and I want to be able to balance and negotiate their needs without designating one as primary and automatically gets more time and attention than the other two, right? Like that's what we're talking about. And if we apply that to funeral care, right, it looks like right now there is like this hierarchy of tradition and everything else is secondary, right? Like we'll deal with those families when they come. We're not going to be concerned about it right now. Our focus and all of our time and attention goes to upholding tradition or being dignified or whatever these ideas that we're kind of moving past as newer and younger generations move and age into death planning, right? They're being met with this hierarchy of principles in death care that doesn't really serve them anymore. And so I love that analogy of being able to say, what if we took the hierarchy out of it and said that it can be a both and we just take what we like and leave the rest for each individual family?
So we can close and plug, and on this thing right here is where we've come to, I think, together is, unfortunately, there's a legal hierarchy that we're never getting out of, and that's called the authorizing agent, and sometimes that's the dead person, sometimes that's a living, and we need to ask ourselves the choices that we make for the people that are here after we're gone, because this is a big problem with prearranging our funerals. What is the harm of your choices? Because you intend to cause no harm with your prearrangements, but...
Yeah. No, and I mean,
I can tell stories.
And I'm not saying don't do what is illegal. Right. Sure. But I'm saying the way that we think about how we approach families, right? The way that we think about the services that we offer or what our priorities are. That's what I'm talking about.
Right. So we take ourselves out of that hierarchy structure and we exist in the world as undertakers. We do respond when asked. That's our human responsibility, but I think we engage with education when the opportunity arises, and we must be looking for that opportunity because, as you said at the beginning, not everyone will ask. And sometimes taking ourselves a little less seriously by growing our hair out and maybe just going to church a little bit or being sober just for a minute to see if it's okay, because everyone's freaking out. Like, I kind of like church, though. Like, our identities don't have to quarrel because they are only and uniquely mine.
Yes.
But I can learn from yours because when you explain your relationship, I'm going, I got friends like that sometimes require more attention. And mothers understand when their children need more attention. And it's just this unique energy that's passed around to people who need care. So I think we're getting somewhere. We got a lot to talk about over the years. We've done an hour and 5 minutes in 5. I had an interaction here in the funeral home, and I'll just briefly just say it, like, turned me upside down. And this happens every day. So if anyone else this is happening to them, just connect with us, because we do have good interactions on a daily basis. Life is worth living. And I know it's a rough month for everyone. So we're going to be doing some really positive content. I'm talking about really deep stuff, and everyone is. So we're not just the only ones doing it. So what we wanted to say, there's a big deal in Vegas that's happening, and it's being thrown by an association. And they've let you know about it because you've pre-registered in mass. So the network is getting together at this big event that we always go to, and it's going to be a massive event that you're all invited to. We're going to have some stuff because we're a week out from plugging it, I think. September 1st is when we would like to drop this show. This may be the second show because we're going deep down the rabbit hole. But anyway, back to Vegas, a big deal at Palm Mortuary Southwest. This is an SCI firm. What is Undertaking the Podcast doing with the corporate people? Well, you got to show up to find out. It's like a funeral. If you want to have an experience, you got to show up to find out. So Alexandra, you and any of your friends, anyone that you know is a good person, I'm sure, and they are welcome to come. And it's not my event. It's Palm SCI's flagship location. I believe they have a bunch. In Vegas, 6 to 10 on the 10th. It's Sunday night.
Awesome.
Transportations may be provided. We're saying come in and walk around, see all the friends of the network. We'll see who's there because everyone will be coming in and out. There will be a celebration of life at 8. It is now, I'm going to speak in the future. It's now done. I got 10 days to do it. So, Alexandra, that is the big event that I'm doing. I know an association's got a real big thing. We're going shopping later. We're going to see Parting Stone in their booth, probably all there. But you and I got a buddy, Tim. Is that right? And some other people.
And
yes.
And Dr. Sarah Murphy. Yeah, the two of them are hosting and throwing this wonderful queer death care professionals meetup, which is going to be at Charlie's in Las Vegas. And I believe that there will be a food truck. There will be karaoke. There will be transportation to and from where the convention is. The departures are from the Resorts World Group Transportation area. They are at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., and 11 p.m. with return trips at 8:30, 9:30, 10:30, and 11:30 and midnight. You can get shuttled to and from Charlie's. Sarah Murphy has gone out of her way to make this thing happen, and it's going to be incredible. She's done such a good job planning it. So
Okay, so now I have not met Sarah Murphy, but over the month of August, I have heard that name more than any other name in my brain is Sarah Murphy. Tell
Sarah's
me what
out-
she's speaking about at NFDA.
So Dr. Sarah Murphy is a thanatologist and a professor of thanatology and suicidologist, and is a dear friend of mine. And yeah, Sarah has been on my podcast multiple times talking about disenfranchised grief, talking about support for the queer community in death care. Yeah, so Sarah's really great. She is either speaking about suicide or LGBTQIA plus folks. I believe it's queer folks this year.
But here's the thing, that's her specialty, and a lot of these things are deep rooted in the human spirit and psyche of really deep topics that we all face, and that's isolation and rejection and just plainly not being seen as just human beings. And
Yes.
we are our own worst enemy when it comes to death care. We line up our identities and we start playing Red Rover. And I'm saying, hey, let's get in a circle. And, if you want to walk away, bye. You can come back whenever you want and we'll hold hands. That's how the circle works. But this event is what I've been hearing about, this big event Monday evening. Is this sponsored by anyone? Do you want to plug the sponsors?
I know that Sarah does have sponsors. Again, I didn't plan this year, so I am giving you. Yeah, I planned last year. Parting Stone sponsored last year, but because my job shifted, we weren't sure if I was going to go to NFDA or not. But I am. But so I didn't help plan this year. Sarah would be able to speak more to the sponsors. But I also want to plug that Parting Stone is hosting drinks on Tuesday night as well. So that will be at the
3-day event.
It sure is. At the Convention Center bar, we will be hosting drinks for folks who want to come and get to know the Parting Stone staff from 7 to 10. So,
Beautiful. So,
yeah.
So as folks arrive in Las Vegas, we're starting off Saturday. I know I'll be setting up our event there at that, that SCI, that big old mortuary there. And I've toured it virtually. We will be live streaming the event. Details are probably out by now. This event will be a feeder system into Monday's event. For those that come, we'll be able to announce and plug that event because this networking event only grows when we're inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
So as associations struggle, the network grows by having podcast after podcast and learning briefly from each other. So Alexandra, I know I kind of put myself out there as like, I'm just going to throw this conversation to the wall, and my brain's all over the place. Thank you for trying to keep up with my brain because it's broken these days.
No, I appreciate it so much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Yeah.
As I've stripped my identity of like embalmer, funeral director, I just call myself Undertaker. Ask me and I will do that. And in the meantime, I'm just looking to help. That's what we're doing at the big show in Vegas. We're going to help your event Tuesday. And then Tim's, I know Tim's, and it's not just Tim's. I know Return Home is pushing this event as well. Those our friends out in Auburn, Washington.
I bet they're one of the sponsors. Yeah.
Oh, I can tell you that they are. That's folklore that I can confirm for
cool.
real.
Yeah. I love the folklore.
They want this too. They want this to be the event of NFDA, and we're going to help them with our little thing because our thing is not going to be the best. It's to help them and then to help yours. And that's all we want to do. We're having fun doing it. Alexandra, tell them how to find Death Curious Podcast and then at NFDA because you'll be there.
Yeah, so my podcast is the Death Curious Podcast. You can find it on Apple or Spotify or anywhere that you get your podcasts. And then I also have deathcurious.com that has the blog, and you can sign up for our newsletter that will just send you new blog updates so you don't have to constantly be checking the website. I also have Death Curious on TikTok. We do pretty well on TikTok. I am very cringe and vulnerable on that account. So if you want to go see me embarrassing myself trying to do the memes with the Gen Z, that's where you go. But we have a really great following and a really great community on the TikTok and on Instagram as well. I've got a really wonderful, little community on Instagram at Death Curious on both of those.
Nice. Folks, go and follow her. I know we're here on social media, mainly for Twitter. We're doing really production in YouTube now, so find us there. And I got to be careful with TikTok. I accidentally stitched myself driving in circles in a tractor with somebody, but I didn't really edit it because I didn't care. I was just trying to be silly, and I think I hurt Lauren's feeling, and I want to say sorry to Lauren in Florida. I've never met Lauren. I think she may have pink hair, but I think she thought I was making fun of her with my tractor, and I was just driving in circles. So I like falling on swords because that was a real thing that I didn't know about until after the damage was done. I was like, damn. So anyway, thanks for being here. Rate, review, subscribe. Ryan Ballard's not here, so I'll just say it. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
A funeral will hold up in front of society the most noble, the most thoughtful, sensitive, caring, compassionate aspects of life. And you turn the mirror a little bit, and a funeral will also show you glaringly the selfish, cynical, unkind, insensitive, thoughtless side of life.
This is what my father will look like when he's dead, to myself. It was just like that. And then suddenly the tense all changed, and I said to myself, this is my father dead. That's how it happens.
The most special things you can have in a funeral, and the things that you'll always remember for families, are the things that actually don't cost any money.